Do you like Japanese idols? Have you ever been interested about the ins and outs of the idol industry? Well, the answer for me is, I've never given a shit about either, but here I am watching and enjoying Oshi No Ko. Now, do I think Oshi No Ko is peak fiction? No, but is it very good? Yes. Before Oshi No Ko came out, there was an immense amount of hype around the series due to the fact it had been written by the same author that made Love is War. Going by that logic, everything Jun Maeda wrote after Clannad should have been a masterpiece, but we all know how that ended. The Tao became God. So I was cautiously optimistic. Then the first episode, or should I say movie, came out and everybody was instantly hooked. We had a gorgeous new waifu in Ai Hoshino on our screens who stood out. She had an aura of a main character with the starry eyes and endlessly kind yet slightly airheaded personality. A real star, if you will. Get it? Because the English title is My Star? No, honestly my humour's wasted here. We had a Mushoku Tensei-esque reincarnation story, but uniquely we got to see a fair amount of the main character Aqua's life before getting killed off, rather than it happening in the first 3 minutes of the show. And then once the reincarnation happened, we saw the daily lives of the main characters. We watched as Ai was trying to make it in the idol industry whilst trying to keep the fact she had twins under wraps. We watched as Aqua and his sister Ruby, who was also reincarnated, dealt with their new realities as being born as the children of their favourite idol. And dancing babies became a thing. That was funny. Aqua begins dipping his toes into acting, setting up a potential future for himself in the industry. It was all going well until the end, where a crazy stalker finds where Ai lives and kills her. The movie was simultaneously the best and worst introduction to the series. It gave backstories to main characters and good ones at that. Ruby's backstory was particularly gripping, going from a sickly child who didn't even have a thought about the future because she thought she didn't have one, to somebody who had got a second chance at life. This backstory became the driving force for her future career in the idol industry and a just general positive outlook on life. And I ended up caring more about Ai's character than some protagonists that had 24 episodes worth of screen time. The thing that sealed Ai as a legendary character in many people's eyes was her unwavering kindness towards her killer, even in her final moments. Her killer was a crazed guy who felt lied to by her because she had kids and wasn't really who her public persona led everybody to believe, but she told him that she remembered meeting him, and even in the moment that he had hurt her, she said she wanted to love him, which took some real strength to say. But the reason I say the movie was the best and simultaneously worst introduction to the series was because whilst the movie was near perfection, the rest of the series was vastly different from what we were expecting the rest of the series to be. It's like a fish that moves towards the bait only for the end result to be a hook through the neck. Okay, the rest of the series was nowhere near as bad as a hook through the neck, but you see where I'm coming from here. What drew you in, which was mostly Ai and her story at this point, let's face it, was merely a setup, a bait for the rest of the series. If you have ever watched Vinland Saga, which you definitely should, this situation strangely reminds me of Thorfinn and his father. His father was this strong warrior who no longer seeks to fight and looks like a main character, but he gets killed off early and you're left slightly disappointed that he won't feature in the rest of the series. Anyway, after the point of Ai getting killed off, we move on to episode 2 where we skip about 10 years and Aqua and Ruby are just entering high school and the anime focuses upon their lives. Aqua's story is essentially a revenge story. He wants to find his father because his father tipped off the guy who killed Ai as to where she lived, although he hasn't explicitly stated what he will do when he does eventually find his father. But Aqua is somewhat of a flawed character. I've never read the manga, but we all know revenge stories never end well. I mean, it would be pretty boring if the character just went, I'm gonna get my revenge, and then it just happens. But on a slightly deeper level, Aqua is flawed because he has made it his life goal to seek revenge since Ai was killed. From working together with the director he met just to get a foothold into the industry, to taking part in reality TV shows just to gain some information about Ai and thus his father. There are a couple of problems with this, the first being he's so focused on revenge that he isn't living the second chance he's had at life to the fullest. He could pursue friendships, he could pursue romantic interests, he could pursue an actual acting career that he's just dipping his toes into currently. But these things are merely side quests to him that are useful to his main objective of finding his father and exacting his revenge. But there is a second flaw to his character. Olympians train for 4 whole years to compete in the Olympics. They train every single day, they compete in smaller competitions which are nice to win, but the main objective is the Olympics. Eventually the Olympics come round, the time has come. 16 short days later, win or lose, it all ends. 4 years of preparation for 16 days, provided they even make it to the final rounds. What happens after? Well, in some cases Olympians can feel pretty depressed even if they win. Why? Well, because they no longer have anything to strive for. Every day, every month, every year dedicated to one singular goal, and now that goal has come and gone. So what is my point here? Well, Aqua's dedicated the last 10 years of his life to seeking his father, and even if he does find him, even if he achieves his goal, then what? If he truly has no interest in acting or much else for that matter, what will he do with his life? It will leave a big gaping hole. And again, we can draw comparisons to Vinland Saga here. After Askeladd kills his father, Thorfinn dedicates his life to a singular goal of killing Askeladd and was filled with hatred. But 10 or 15 years later, when somebody else kills Askeladd, Thorfinn becomes totally lost and empty because it was that one singular goal that was keeping him going. But the good thing for Aqua is, if he widened his perspective a bit, he would see that he does have a talent for acting and that there is a career there if he wanted. He would see that he has some good people around him, he would see that he has a fulfilling life to live. If he just widened his perspective a bit, seeing all the possibilities in his life, he probably wouldn't care that much about revenge. Ruby, on the other hand, is as pure as they come and Aqua's antithesis. She wants to become an idol because she wants to follow in her mother's footsteps, but also make the most of her second chance at life. And Ruby is the way she is, despite sharing a similar experience to Aqua, being a fan of Ai and then becoming her offspring, only for her to semi-witness the death of her favourite idol and new mother. But Ruby doesn't share the same thoughts of revenge. Instead, she moves on, she moves forward with her life, which is a much more wise way to handle the situation, which is kind of ironic because she is actually much younger than Aqua if you take into account their previous lives. And look, you could argue that Ruby is making the mistake of entering the very same industry that caused Ai's death, and you would have a valid point. But if I didn't enter the idol industry in the first place, she wouldn't have become the star and mother that Ruby idolised and loved, and she probably wouldn't have been reincarnated as Ai's child. So what kind of anime do we actually have here? It's an idol anime crossed with a revenge story. It's a cross between an anime called Skip Beat, which yet again is a revenge story based in the idol industry, and Nana, which I'm sure a few of you have seen. But what exactly separates Oshi No Ko from the rest? I love it in anime where there's foreshadowing and retrospective references. These things make a series feel like a more complete story. Have you ever watched an anime where it kind of feels like they're just making it up as they go along, as if the previous episodes hadn't even happened? Whereas Oshi No Ko feels like a well-planned story. The movie feels like a separate entity because of the loss of Ai and the time skip, but it still plays a massive role in the rest of the series. An example of this is when Ai is dying and she tells Aqua and Ruby what she hopes they might become in the future. She tells Ruby that she hopes she becomes an idol and for Aqua to become an actor. And of course we know that Ruby is striving to become an idol in the present day, but Aqua is ironically becoming what his mother wanted him to become, despite claiming he has no real interest in acting and is only doing it to avenge Ai. And then there's the ongoing storyline of the relationship between Aqua and Ruby, both knowing that they've both been reincarnated, but not being aware that they were patient and doctor that met in their previous life. The foreshadowing of the eventual moment they both discover who they once were is something that keeps you watching because you know that moment will be something special. And then there are the character designs, and whichever way you look at it, they stand out. The stars in the eyes of Ai, Aqua and Ruby is a feature that stays in the mind. And there is a rich assortment of deep and diverse colours in every frame. Akane and Kana's hair colours particularly stand out to me. And this brings me on to the side characters. They all have their own backstories and mini arcs, if you will, but are included in a way that adds to the story and doesn't feel like a chore to watch. We discover Kana was a good child actor but was soon forgotten when she grew too old to be one. This changed her as a person and she became a lot more cynical and not the cheerful, happy-go-lucky persona that most idols perceive. Just as her career looks like it's going to fade into irrelevancy, she gets a chance to revive it in the new B Komachi idol group with Ruby. Although she was still very much cynical and doubtful towards herself, she agreed to join the group, and once B Komachi's first performance came around in the final episode, when she was on stage we got some more flashbacks to her past that saw her fall off. But after seeing the crowd cheering and realising that she had a fresh opportunity in the industry, she gained some newfound vigour to win over the hearts of the fans and give this idol thing another shot. It was a pretty satisfying arc and one that has potential to continue into the future, and this is all from a supporting character too. The show doesn't lean too much on its main characters and makes the other aspects of the world interesting and engaging. And then there was Akane Kurokawa. There was a very real element and message behind her story. Akane was part of a reality TV show that Aqua also took part in, and they ended up as a couple at the end of the show, and they decided to keep their relationship up in their public personas but not privately. Now let's address the controversy surrounding Akane's mental health storyline. The long and short of it goes like this. Akane's character is struggling to deal with social media criticism from the public off the back of her being on the reality TV show. This leads her down a dark path that ends up with her trying to take her own life, only for Aqua to save her at the very last moment. Now, around 3 years ago, a Japanese wrestler named Hana Kimura unfortunately passed away due to similar reasons, and after episode 6 when this storyline first aired, Hana's mother accused the Oshi No Ko writers of using her daughter's death as a base for Akane's storyline. Look, I'm not going to offer an opinion as to whether I think what Hana's mother said was factual or not, because I don't think it's really my place to do so, but I will use this opportunity to say it's always better to be kind than to be hateful. If you don't like something on the internet, not subscribing, not liking and not commenting is much more impactful and less harmful to the creator than chucking hateful speech into the world. Okay, virtue signalling over. And then there's Memcho. Memcho is just Memcho. So to conclude this video, what do I think of Oshi No Ko? As we've discussed, I think the world building and characters are top notch, and that's due to its writing. I think this anime could have quite easily been quite average if it wasn't these writers who wrote it. However, throughout watching it week in week out and throughout writing the script for this video, I couldn't help but feel like there was something missing from the series. In theory the series has everything that makes an anime great, but somehow I was still left with this feeling. And I've been racking my brain trying to find a reason why I feel this way. One possibility could be the lack of relatability. The main reason so many anime are based in high school is because everybody, or at least the vast majority of people, have gone to high school, so it's immediately relatable. But which characters are actually relatable in Oshi No Ko? Aqua is considered a main character, but is he actually relatable? Is his life relatable? Are his motivations relatable? Is his growth relatable? And the same questions could be asked about the other characters. Their stories make for good viewing, but the number one thing that draws people in about anime is there's always elements of relatability. The other thing that could explain what I thought was missing was a question that I always ask myself after finishing an anime. What did this anime actually make me feel? They attempted to create feeling with Akane Kurokawa, but, and this might sound a bit controversial, it felt forced to me. Before her trying to take her own life, she was only introduced in the previous episode and was only a side character at that, and it might sound bad, but I didn't really care that much about the scene. Now of course I want to make it clear that when this happens in real life it is absolutely tragic, but we are talking about anime characters here. If Akane was introduced in episode 3 say, and her storyline happened sometime in season 2, then perhaps I might be more inclined to care because she's had more screen time, she's had more development, but as it is, it just felt forced to me. So tell me what you thought about the series. Do you think the hype around the series is warranted? And tell me if you agree with my criticisms and my overall review. And if anybody is watching at this point, I just want to thank you, because this is the first kind of video I've done where I've done like a deep dive style video where it's probably going to be 15 odd minutes, and it took a lot of effort, it took a lot of editing. So if you're at this point still, just thank you for watching.